Olympus has finally put us in the picture. The Japanese camera maker says it did cover up losses, hiding them in dubious deals worth more than $1 billion. The scandal came to light after newly appointed CEO Michael Woodford asked for answers. He was swiftly dismissed, with Olympus citing management issues. The company now says it's guilty of inappropriate accounting, but with shares down 29% just in this session Tuesday, investors and the Tokyo Stock Exchange might regard that as the ultimate understatement.
Yeah, well, one man who certainly thinks so is Michael Woodford. He is with me and he'll be talking to us live in just a moment. But let's remind you of his previous visit to CNN last month. Then he told me just how much pressure he was putting on his former employers to come clean.
It's all in the public now. I've passed my correspondence to the world's media, the SFO. I'm now in communication with the FBI. This can't be hidden. This can't be put back in the box.
At the time, telling us he felt like he was in the middle of a movie. Well, a Tokyo Stock Exchange spokesman says depending on the scale of the cover-up, Olympus could be delisted. So let's remind you of how this all unfolded. Between 2006 and 2008, Olympus bought 3 small companies with a joint value of just less than $1 billion. Olympus wrote down their value by $700 million 2 years ago. Another deal really raised suspicion in Michael Woodford, the acquisition of British medical equipment company Gyrus. $687 million, more than a third of the $2 billion purchase price, was paid to a financial advisor in the Cayman Islands. Now, the normal fee in these kinds of circumstances is just about 1% to 2%. So a lot of red flags appear, Charles.
Indeed. Well, as the scandal at Olympus has spiraled, the company's share price has plummeted. Let me just show you its trajectory over the past month. Michael Woodford's dismissal as CEO and president and the bitter aftertaste of all that did enough damage 3 weeks ago. But if today's developments were supposed to be an exercise in crisis management, you can see just how pathetically fruitless that proved. The stock is down nearly 70% over the month, and as Maggie said, it's down by 29% this Tuesday alone. So by my arithmetic, it's worth less than a third of what it was before all the scandal broke, Maggie.
Which is shocking.
Well, the new Olympus president, Shuichi Takayama, blamed the misleading financial statements on 3 company executives, including the former chairman, Tsuyoshi Kikukawa. But Takayama stopped short of saying he'd reinstate Michael Woodford. In fact, he said quite the opposite. Woodford, of course, was fired after questioning the suspicious payments. Well, we can get his side of the story right now. Welcome back to CNN, Michael. Let's get straight to the point. Did you know about these investment losses that had to be covered up in this way?
Absolutely not. No, of course not.
How come you as president could have possibly, and as a senior executive before that, have possibly been unaware of these kind of practices?
Again, I didn't arrive in Tokyo as president until the 1st of April this year. I don't think shareholders knew. I don't think the majority of the people in the company knew. All I was aware of is that we'd bought Gyrus. There was a lot of goodwill. We'd made acquisitions in the past which seemed not the most commercial, but no idea whatsoever. If I did, I certainly wouldn't have gone to Tokyo.
Why do you think these payments had to be buried, covered up in this way?
It's a good question. I mean, they say it goes back to the early 1990s and that there were losses on securities trading. What we have to ask now is what were those losses, how big were those losses, and then the amount of money we paid, nearly $1 billion on these acquisitions at current exchange rates, plus 700, you're looking at over $1.5 billion has been paid. Now, who has that gone to? Who's assisted Olympus? Who's received money from Olympus in these transactions? And those questions of fundamental importance and need to be answered.
Well, let's try and flesh out a few answers, because clearly, if it had been known that Olympus was losing money on this scale, presumably the share price would have dived, and I imagine that some of the executives who've been forced to fall on their swords would have had an interest in keeping the share price high.
I mean, this goes back to the early 1990s, according to the statements made today, so it crosses 2 presidencies. Kikukawa, who's been there for 10 years, and before that Shimeyama, who was also there for 10 years. So this passing on of the dirty secret has gone between the 2 presidents, and I'm sure once I'd served my 4 years contract, it would have been passed on from Kikukawa to Mori.
Well, Reuters had an interesting report in the past 24 to 48 hours, suggesting that the reason that Olympus parted company with its auditors, KPMG, a couple of years ago was because KPMG and Olympus differed as to how some of these issues, some of these acquisitions ought to be accounted. Can you shed any light on that?
I've seen the documents relating to those exchanges, and I've released some of those documents myself. So I think there are fundamental questions for the two large auditing companies involved, both KPMG and Ernst & Young. Both of those companies qualified the UK accounts, which paid the 620 million from the UK to the Cayman Islands on consolidation for years 2009, 2010. There was nothing in the accounts. Why is that? Those questions need to be answered by both KPMG and Ernst & Young.
Do you think that actually auditors can work hand in glove with, if you like, old school Japanese bosses, which it seems to be, you know, that Kikuyama and his predecessor were old school Japanese bosses who like this kind of subterfuge, and you know, might, as a result of what the questions that you want to ask, might the auditors be in the frame?
I think after Enron, there's a great sensitivity in relation to auditors. Certainly in the UK, the partners did their duty. They qualified the accounts, and I think they have to answer. They have to stand up, both of those large firms, and explain their part in this. At the moment, they've been saying client confidentiality, but again, with the investigations, which hopefully will take place from here onwards, they will be made to answer.
I have to ask you one last question. At the press conference in Japan this morning, Takayama, the new president, was asked whether you ought to come back. A lot of people, analysts in the marketplace and that kind of thing, think you're the only person who would have credibility, and that the old guard, if you like, is so discredited that they will not have the credibility that will allow Olympus to stay as a listed company on the Tokyo Stock Exchange. Would you be willing to go back?
Very much so. Nothing more that I want to go back and take the company forward from here. There's 40,000 plus employees who must be in a wretched state, and I feel a great obligation to them, so absolutely yes.
Michael Woodford joining me here live, the former president and CEO of Olympus. Maggie.
Fair to